Greetings, everyone. My name is Thokozani Liwewe. I am a Biosecurity Game Changers Fellow with the Pandemic Center at Brown University. It is my pleasure to welcome you all to the third session of the Game Changer Seminar Series. Today, we will discuss a critical topic in global health security, which is regional policies on dual-use research and research involving pathogens of pandemic potential. And we're very honored to have an exceptional panel of experts who will lead this discussion. So please feel free to engage and ask questions through the chat. And now allow me to welcome our moderator for today's seminar, my fellow Biosecurity Game Changers Fellow, Sandra Matinyi, who will introduce our panelists and take us through the rest of the program today. So over to you, Sandra. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Thokozani, and a very warm welcome to everyone joining us today. We are really very thrilled to host this timely conversation on regional policies governing dual-use research and research of involving pathogens of pandemic potential. You're going to let me at this moment introduce to you the speakers for that day. And first of all, our first speaker is Peter Babigumira Habu, who is a Senior Technical Advisor at Makerere University's Infectious Diseases Institute and Epidemic Intelligence Analyst at the Uganda National Institute of Public Health. Our second speaker for the day is Dr. Joris Arnold Nemdem Kenpak, who is the Biosecurity and Biosafety Technical Officer at the Africa CDC. And our third speaker will be Dr. Raim Ben Khalifa, who is a research biotechnologist at the Laboratory of Biomolecules, Venom and Theranostic Applications and the head of the Rodolphe Neuro BSL-3 Laboratory at the Pasteur Institute of Tunis. So to kick us off, we shall turn at this point to Peter Babigumira, who will speak to us, introducing us to this subject, but also will speak about the WHO guidance framework for the responsible use of life sciences and Uganda's experience of piloting this particular framework and its crucial role of oversight in mitigating risks tied to dual-use research and pathogens of pandemic potential. Peter, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sandra. Am I coming out loud and clear?
Yes, yes.
Okay, great. So first of all, it's an honor to be here and share an evening where I'm from, but morning or afternoon with you esteemed colleagues to discuss a topic that cuts across science, security, ethics, and policy. So to begin with, dual-use research really looks at research conducted for legitimate scientific purposes that could be misused to pose a threat to public health, agriculture, and the environment, or even national security. Think of research that improves pathogen transmissibility or resistance, but could also be weaponized. So these pathogens of pandemic potential are really biological agents with high transmissibility and virulence in humans, capable of
We lost you, Peter. Peter, we cannot hear you. We
Do you have
lost
me now,
Peter
Sandra?
over there. Yes, yes,
Do
we
you have
can
me?
hear you now.
Okay, sorry. Yes. So where did you lose me?
No, you could just start from there.
Okay, yeah. So basically, I was talking about dual use research, and then I was talking about pathogens of pandemic potential, and these are agents with high transmissibility and virulence in humans, capable of triggering large-scale outbreaks or pandemics. And these include, for example, engineered strains of influenza, coronavirus, or reconstructed historical pathogens like the 1918 H1N1. Now, research involving these organisms, especially when gain of function methods are used, straddles a very fine line between public good and potential catastrophe. The concern isn't just accidents, but the potential for intentional misuse if this knowledge or material falls in the wrong hands. So this brings me to the Global Guidance Framework. So the Global Guidance Framework for Responsible Use of the Life Sciences was developed in 2022 to help countries manage biorisks associated with dual-use research and pathogens of pandemic potential. It offers a
Peter, we seem to have lost you again. As we wait for Peter to come back and speak on from there about the Global Guidance Framework for the responsible use of life science, move on, and we have the next presenter. And the next presenter is going to be Dr. Jores from the Africa CDC. Dr. Jores, please take on the microphone.
Toko? Sandra, can you hear me?
I can hear you, but I think as you get ready to, as you deal out with the network, we could have the next
I think so.
the next panelist, and then we can come back to you. Thank you. Dr. Jores? Dr. Jores?
Yes, Sandra, thank you. Thank you very much. Just give me a minute to try to share my screen, please.
All right. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. Sandra, please, can you confirm if you can see the screen and also if you are able to hear me?
Yes.
Oh, thank you very
Your
much.
screen is up
Thank
and
you.
we can hear you.
Okay, thank you very much. So, good afternoon, good morning to everyone. So I tried to do according to what was asked to me to present, to do this presentation on the dual use risks and policies in Africa. So I will especially think about the emerging risks and Africa CDC role in strengthening the dual use research, governance, and align with global health frameworks. So for this presentation, also what I was thinking is that African research actually is at an exciting juncture with incredible advancement in different fields, including vaccine development, including diagnostic and genomic sequencing. However, with this progress, we have the responsibility to address potential security concerns. So during this presentation, I will try to highlight how Africa CDC is actively supporting our member states in building their national and regional framework to make them robust enough to face the risk effectively and responsibly. So the dual use risk in Africa, I know Peter was going to tell us more on the dual use risk. So I will not go maybe too much into details, but I want to show or to say a few things on the dual use risks and try to focus mainly in Africa. We know that a primary concern is the potential for life sciences research to be misused for harmful purposes, especially when it involves pathogens that could cause, for example, pandemic or other type of diseases. If we imagine, for example, the devastating impact if we have highly and deadly viruses which are studied for disease prevention, for example, if these viruses fall into the wrong hands or if they're accidentally released. So in this case, identifying these threats at the early stage will be very, very important to protect public health, while also pushing the boundaries of scientific discovery in our Africa regions. So the security concern in pathogen research, the very innovations that can save life also carry actually risks in an inherent way. Our challenge and our collective responsibility is then how to develop methods or appropriate method of risk identification. And we know that this is not about stopping doing research. It is actually about enabling a science which will be within a secure and ethical frameworks like the framework of WHO that Peter was presenting before he got cut. And then our ability to identify and manage these risks directly correlates with our capacity to protect our population from biological threats. And beyond the research itself, the physical handling of dangerous pathogens presents its own set of security concerns. So we must ensure that these materials are handled, stored, and transported with the maximum care and control. And this includes everything preventing authorized access to a lab or unauthorized access to laboratory to safeguard the sample that we use, but also during the transit across very long distances. As we know, in Africa, our laboratory, sometimes we need to transport sample because some of the laboratory may have limited capacities. And given the gravity of these risks, Africa CDC is playing a very important role, a pivotal role in that dual-use research of concern. So the mission of Africa CDC is in some way is to support member states in building resilient systems that can effectively manage these complex challenges. So at Africa CDC, we believe in proactive measures to secure Africa research features. So one of the core activities involve working directly with member states to develop and strengthen their national framework for dual-use research and pathogen governance. This means actually improving existing law and regulation and creating new ones where necessary. So all designed to have a better management in terms of dual-use and also potential pandemic threats. So you can see here a few frameworks put in place by Africa CDC, including the regional biosafety and biosecurity legal framework, which is being domesticated in many countries to make sure that the African countries, they have a specific legislation which speak to biosafety and biosecurity in general, and then of course to the dual-use research. So we have more than 7 countries which have started the domestication of this member state, and Africa CDC will be continue working with the member states to make sure that all the member states, they have a good legislation. Africa CDC are also put in place a regulatory and certification framework to make sure that the institutions which handle high-risk pathogens, they are authorized or they are certified and receive authorization before they handle this type of pathogens. Then Africa CDC recently also developed this biological agent and toxin of consent document, which is actually a guidance to make sure that each country has in place a national, how will I call it? A national document which put in place all the rules to manage high consequence agent and toxin, but also have a national list of pathogen of priorities to make sure of an early detection and response to this type of pathogens. Africa CDC actually furthermore promotes a dedicated and ensuring regional governance mechanism to make sure that these mechanisms are aligned with global health and security framework. So these ensure consistency and collaboration with international best practices for overseeing GIO's research of concern and pathogen with pandemic protection. So we want to make sure that we are all speaking the same languages of biosafety and biosecurity, and we want to make sure that we also have a collective, we enhance collectively the ability to respond to global health crisis. Africa CDC also believe that no single country can tackle these challenges alone. So Africa CDC is actively fostering the regional collaboration, putting in place the regional technical working group on all the 5 regions of Africa, but also building vital capacity through specialized training programs, facilitating knowledge sharing among experts, providing critical technical support. So you can see the regional training and certification program framework which has been developed by Africa CDC with 4 domains, including the biorisk management, the biological waste management, the biocontainment, and the biosafety cabinet handling, maintenance, and certification. These are the 4 first priority areas that the African member states have proposed, but still working after the closing of the first phase. Africa CDC is working to identify new priorities, and of course, there might be new areas like including artificial intelligence or biosecurity that will be coming. And so far, we have more than 300 people which has been trained using this program, and 3 centers of excellence for biosafety and biosecurity, which has been established. So just for the interest of time, I will want to conclude to say that addressing GIU's risk is absolutely fundamental to Africa's health security, and the Africa CDC commitment to strengthening governance, aligning our policies with global standards, and enhancing regional cooperation is not just important, it's actually vital to ensure that research involving pathogen with pandemic potential is conducted safely and responsibly for the benefit of all of us. So of course, closing this, we want to thank all the institutions working with Africa CDC, and of course to thank all of you for inviting us to present what Africa CDC is doing. Thank you so much. I want to stop here and of course remain available for more clarifications. Thank you very much, Sandra. Thank you to everyone.
Thank you so much, Dr. Joris, for that insightful discussion, presentation about the strategies that Africa CDC is putting in place, as well as some of the collaborations that there are in this space of work. We shall have questions at the end. So at this point, I would like to get back to Peter. Peter, if you're now settled, I think we could get back to you so you can give us the experience of Uganda and talk more about the Okay, so we can since Dr. Rhyme, you put up your whatever your presentation.
Shall I begin?
Peter, are you?
Shall I
Yes,
begin?
I think we can go ahead with you.
Okay.
We can go with you as Peter gets ready. So you're very much welcome, Dr. Raim from Tunis, and over to you. So you can put up your presentation and give us the experience of Tunisia in regards to dual use research governance and how you've dealt with the issue of pathogens of pandemic potential in Tunisia. Thank you, and over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. It's great to be here. I will share with you the experience of Pasteur Institute in responsible research, implementing the code of conduct for evaluating dual use. I will share my screen with you. Yes. Is it okay? It's okay.
Yeah, it's up now.
Okay. So I will allow me to introduce Pasteur Institute a little bit, but it is a national public health establishment with three main missions: research, public health diagnostics, and bioproduction, and also training. But this part of his mission is part of research and development. The governance of Pasteur Institute is managed by administrative board with scientific board also, and the president of the scientific board is a general director. We have an administration with many departments, and we can extend we extend the scientific board to international experts to evaluate the research activities once a year. All the administrative and scientific activities are supported by committees or offices, like the ethical committee. The biomedical ethics committee of Pasteur Institute was founded in 1992. The bioresource committee, the quality committee, the training and internship office, and the health and biosafety committee. The Pasteur Institute has the double hats between the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Higher Education and Research, and is affiliated to the University of Tunis in Manar. Our research laboratories supervise graduate and postgraduate students and organize theoretical and hands-on practice training course at the national level, but also at the international level. Pasteur Institute is, of course, part of the big Pasteur network throughout the world. This network is composed by 33 countries, and other countries are associated to this network. And through this network, we exchange many expertise and scientific collaboration. Since 2015, Institut Pasteur of Tunis is a regional training center for health research, supported by a special program for research and training in tropical disease for the Eastern Mediterranean region. This center have the mission to improve research capacity skills of researchers in the region. This training course is based on pillars recommended by WHO as ethics and good health practices to enhance the skills for implementation research. This slide seems very crowded, but it summarizes the IPT's commitment to an initiative that aims to meet international standards in biosafety and biosecurity and also ethics. Since 2013, Pasteur Institute has undertaken to implement biological and chemical risk management measures after joining the WHO, after joining the WHO training programs for trainers coordinated by the Ministry of Health. The Institute was the focal point for UNICRI, a project for training national experts in biorisk management. And then we were involved in the German biosecurity program with another institution of health in Tunisia. And this program has firstly strengthened good laboratory practice skills, and secondly, diagnostics capacities. And afterward, we had the Pasteur Institute acquired a Basel-free laboratory donated by the Mérieux Foundation. And this laboratory enabled the development of research and international projects involving highly pathogenic agents. In addition, we are Pasteur membership of networks such as Medilab Secure, Pasteur Network, TIDIA, give at the Institute the timely access to epidemiological and molecular data. And Pasteur Institute is involved in innovative and responsible research. The Ethics Committee has therefore drawn up jointly with colleagues from Robert Koch Institute a code of conduct to assess the potential dual use linked to the research of concern on microorganisms and toxins. I will present this code of conduct after this slide. So this, in parallel with all this project, we have begun a reflection within the IPT to assess and identify risks and our capabilities to prevent them. It appears that the role of the committees supporting the institution's missions need to be defined, especially the Committee of Health and Security. So we integrate in this committee a commission of biosafety and biosecurity. At that time, with the diversification of research project and the development of technological approaches, the Medical Ethics Committee members were facing with certain challenges, like risks linked to the ability to generate genetic data on humans or microorganisms, and how we can manage access to data, shared data on databases. How can this data be used to generate the new knowledge and a better understanding of genomes and or function, but also the risk related to sharing this kind of data? And what about incidental findings? Also, in the context of the German biosecurity program, we discussed these questions, and we have the opportunity to discuss them within the side event jointly organized between Germany and Tunisia, and dealing with biosecurity, biorisk, bioethics, where we discussed about responsible research and dual use of concern. This side event was organized within the UN office in December 2014. And this is afterward in 2014, we began to organize some awareness events about responsible research, biosecurity, info days, and parallelly, we organized also joint workshops to develop the code of conduct by the IPT Biomedical Ethics Committee members and some biosafety and biosecurity experts, with Robert Koch Institute experts too. The code of conduct was finalized in July 2015 and presenting during biosafety, biosecurity training workshops and local and international symposia. And we organized a very interesting day in the Tunisian Academy of Science, Letter and Arts, Beit El Hekma, where we talked about the code of conduct within other talks dealing with bioethics and research. The other occasion to discuss about the code of conduct was the symposium organized with Robert Koch Institute, where we presented also the code of conduct and raise awareness about dual use and dual use research of concerns. The IPT Code of Conduct is a code of conduct for assessing potential dual use and reducing risk. In the introduction paragraph, we presented it like the tool to that is necessary to have in Pasteur Institute is to prevent misusing of scientific discoveries related to research on microorganisms and toxin, and able to cause harm to human, animals, plants, and environment. And the code of conduct applies to the handling of this pathogen, microorganism, and toxins, and applies also to other activities related to the to manage microorganisms, like animal facilities or technical platform and biostatistic unit. The assessment of the dual use risk dual use risk is conducted following the code of conduct to preserve the freedom of research that benefits society, and also to prevent the dissemination of information and research results that could harm society and the environment. This is the scheme for the dual use evaluation procedure. So we have a questionnaire and the researcher have to answer questions. If there is the response is no to all the question, the revision is completed and the research could be pursued. And we can submit the project to the ethical committee for an ethical approval. If we have a yes to one question, we have to analyze risk versus benefit, and we have to set up tools to mitigate risks. When we have also, we submit to the ethical committee, if the response is, the answer is also yes, the ethical committee can not accept the conduct to carry out this research in Pasteur Institute, or the committee can ask experts and the IPT General Director too. Because the last person to that have to sign the project is the general director, so himself can also have an expert's consultation and give a positive response or a negative answer to the project. This procedure must be set on the planning step, but also at the final step, or in case we have incidental results, finding we don't expected to have. And also at the end of the project, before exploiting the results and before publishing. To involve scientists in this accountability process, we have adopted a bottom-up and a participative approach. We organized workshops for presenting and evaluating the code of conduct by the Pasteur Institute researcher. Be researcher from different level. And for the implementation, annually, we organize training courses for the use of code of conduct organized by the ethical committee. These annual courses on responsible research and dual use initiate to the use of the code of conduct for assessing the risk associated with research work. And for more disseminating this culture of responsible research, we add some courses to the curriculum of the RTC training program since 2018. So we introduced the code of conduct for national and international research. At the academic level, as we have no ethical law and no research law yet, but we have a project now, a draft law is prepared in the Ministry of Health. We participated with our experts and other experts in Tunisia to share this code of conduct in different universities and the different faculties or institute of high education. And we talk about in these courses of biosafety, biological risk management. We talk about bioethics, we talk about responsible research, and we introduce we expose and we show how we can have responsible behavior using tools for assessing dual use risks related to our research. Excuse me. The researcher identified 3 major trends that are likely to characterize dual use dilemma in the near future. The diversification of dual use domain, the digitalization of potential threats, and also the proliferation of actors. And now in Pasteur Institute, as perspectives, the code of conduct will be extended to other domain of research within the institute, like AR projects, human genetics, and neuroscience. I hope I answered the main question about the Tunisian experience, and thank you very much. I'm available for question.
Thank you so much, Dr. Raim, for that, giving us really very practical guidance on how Tunisia has navigated this. And I think the participants online are able to pick up some insights that they can be able to even take back to the work that they are doing. I would like to inform us all that I will have some little time left for Q&A at the end of the session. But at the same time, do not forget to use the Q&A button on the screen, where you can be able to put through any questions that you may have as we wait to reach that point. But also some of the questions may be answered by the panelists in the chat. So make use of that. At this point, I would like to circle back to Peter to tell us more about the Uganda's experience with dual use research governance. Peter, over to you.
Thank you so much, Sandra. Can you hear me?
Yes, Peter.
Okay. Yes. So I was really, the WHO Global Guidance Framework for Responsible Use, I said before, was developed in 2022 to help countries manage biorisks associated with dual-use research and pathogens of pandemic potential. And in Uganda, we had the pilot. It was the first national pilot of this tool. And we really identified some key gaps and some lessons for our own biosecurity through our opportunity to conduct, to pilot elements of this framework. So there are three main lessons I can mention. First of all, it came out that oversight was fragmented in Uganda. We had multiple research regulators like the National Council of Science and Technology, the National Drug Authority, the institutional or ethics committees or IRBs, but we did not have a unified dual-use research review body. And these dual-use research risks often fall through these cracks, which would even turn us into a risk haven for risky research. Second, there was low-risk literacy, whereby many researchers did not recognize dual-use research risks in their own work. During workshops, we found that even scientists working with recombinant DNA and AMR genes had never considered their work in a dual-use context. And then third, governance requires more than policy. We found that it's important to have trust, community, and a culture of responsibility. And risk communication, peer dialogue, and ethics training had greater immediate impact than institutional reform alone. So the pilot underscored the value of soft power and biosecurity, mentorship, narrative framing, and social learning. This really must go hand in hand with formal oversight. So some of the things we identified for how countries without strong biosafety, biosecurity infrastructure can implement the framework while balancing research advancement and risk mitigation. One, it's important that you embed dual-use research screening into existing review processes. Even if the country lacks a standard dual-use research committee, you may have already institutional review boards or whichever name they go by in your country, and this can be trained to identify red flags. Then the WHO proposed a stepwise model, and this is, again, really a very good way to start. Start small, appoint focal points, conduct awareness workshops, and then adopt interim SOPs, and then scale later. In Uganda, we have a saying that there's SOPs and SOPs, standard operating procedures and standard operating practices. So sometimes you find people may do it first before they write it down. So you may need to be flexible. Then regional harmonization is a very important thing. Sometimes there may be a collective lack of expertise within the country, but working together as a community with different countries, you may be able to leverage these regional networks to have peer learning, to co-develop standards, share risk registries or joint ethics committees can provide oversight where capacity is thin, especially where you have multi-country trials and things of the like. And it's good that we had Shaores go before because, Africa Union has NEPAD and all these other things, but there's a question. What happens when you have several countries in Africa all, partaking in a particular trial or exercise or development effort? Is there where we can have continental level kind of dual use oversight, whereby in countries with limited capacity, that continental overlook can kind of help meet the gaps? And then finally, it's important to encourage bottom-up reporting, foster environment so scientists feel empowered to voice security concerns, even if they fear slowing down their research. So the balance lies in framing risk mitigation as enabling science, not blocking it. Framing is a very important part of everything that we do. And dual use research governance should be seen as a layer of scientific quality control. It should be seen as part of the process. So I wanted to highlight briefly what the role of national oversight can be. So effective national oversight really involves both top-down and also bottom-up engagement. So the structures are top-down, but the engagement really has to be bottom-up. And elements include, one, you need to have a legal authority, as we mentioned in the Ugandan case. The absence of this unified or harmonized legal authority would be very important because it can help streamline the dual use research review, either via updated biosecurity laws, biosafety laws, or national research guidelines. Then a national dual use research registry of flagged studies can help a lot to track developments and assess cumulative risks. If any of you have ever done regulatory work, whether in the pharmacy, whether it's in the pharmacy space with drug authorities or in any other regulatory space, you find that when you have someone working on one dossier, 2 dossiers, 10 dossiers, 100 dossiers, they build up the knowledge and the expertise in evaluating some of these applications over time. So having a register can help newcomers catch up very quickly and can help the oldcomers sort out some of the tricky points. Then publication guidance for potentially sensitive findings is important because you have to balance transparency with security to avoid info hazards. So mitigation really has to include all the usual. Sometimes we think that the dual use research oversight is going to replace biosafety and biosecurity. It's not, it's part of it. So mitigation should always include the usual: physical containment, access control, responsible data handling, you know. For example, things like export controls may need to apply, you know, but the dual use research oversight now works with all these things harmoniously. So it's not a competitor or a replacement. The last thing I want to talk about, Sandra, was really highlighting what I think the global health security implications of this unregulated dual use research could be. And the issue would be the spillover and spread. Because if you have a containment breach in a country, it can really see the global pandemic. And without going into details, many of us are still debating the origins of COVID-19. For me, that's a glaring reminder of why we should never have to debate origins of a pandemic ever again. So it's important that whenever research is conducted, all the right things are done to ensure the transparency, the awareness. Yeah. And then erosion of public trust. High profile gain of function research can trigger backlash and public fear, undermining scientific legitimacy. Basically, the witch hunts of the old days of the dark ages. So scientists can even shy away from careers in this space, which already we lack. Then misuse by hostile actors is a very important risk that is always there. And then stigmatization and exclusion. You don't want really researchers from countries lacking oversight to have issues getting visas or getting scholarships because it's perceived that maybe, you know, they are wild, you know, they are doing risky things, or you're not really sure if they are safe or if they have been trained right. So this is a huge risk, and I think it's a huge incentive for countries to get on board with global standards. You know, it's not really as a threat or a coercion, but because it will also create a good environment for the growth of science and technology. So in essence, life sciences are now really embedded within the global health diplomacy, and unregulated dual use research risks harming not just populations, but trust and cooperation upon which scientific progress depends. So in closing, Sandra, I really feel like the future of dual use research and this oversight of pathogens of pandemic potential must be inclusive, anticipatory, and equitable. We shouldn't just look out for lists, you know, list-based approaches or threshold-based, you know, how many volumes of the organism do you have? No. We have to be anticipatory. We have to look at ways of being equitable, and we cannot afford to leave the global south behind in the conversations, because countries like Uganda, where I am, have expertise and ambitions in our Vision 2040. Our president and our leaders always talk about us being positioned industrially, medically, and things of the like. So we need to ensure that the life sciences remain a force for healing, not harm. Thank you, Sandra.
Peter, for sharing with us Uganda's experience in governance of dual use research and some of the strategies that need to be employed to deal with research in this space. At this point, I think we shall be now moving over to open a conversation among our three panelists to explore some of the cross-cutting themes and strategies for regional and global alignment. But as we do so, if you have any questions, please put it in the Q&A section, and then we shall get the question to the panelists. But at this point, I would like to start with Dr. Joros from the Africa CDC. And the question I would like to ask is, considering that there are these diverse challenges faced by various countries in the global south, some of the challenges include limited resources and varying levels of infrastructure. What are some of the collaborative strategies that can be employed to develop and harmonize regional policies on dual-use research and research involving pathogens of pandemic potential? Over to you, Dr. Joros. Dr. Joros, are you?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I was trying to unmute and also put my camera on. Thank you so much, Sandra, for giving me the opportunity to react as the first person. So in terms of, yes, we fully understand that there are limited capacity, especially in Africa. So what Africa CDC has done is to put in place some of the mechanisms, including the fact that we have set a technical working group where member states are all connected, and also put in place like a strategy to select regional subject matter experts. So of course, yeah, Sandra Martinez is one of the subject matter experts in biological waste management in Africa CDC. So we try to use like the subject matter expert, the in-country subject matter experts to solve in-country issues. And then also when there are some issues in other countries, also if we can deploy subject matter experts which are not too far from these countries. But also some of the things that Africa CDC is still doing also is to work on the political will. So Africa CDC is putting in place, has actually worked during like 18 months to put in place like to increase political will. And I know Rim Ben Khalifa from Tunisia, who was presented for Tunisia Perspectives. She has been very involved on this initiative, and that phase of the project was ended, during which policy briefs were developed, but also for the next phase of the project, Africa CDC will be working to make sure that on the different platforms, also where we have political people who take decisions, we have biosafety and dual use research of concerns on their agenda. So we want to make sure that using the limited resources, we can solve the issues. And also Africa CDC, remember I said something on the how do I call it? Regional Center of Excellence for Biosafety and Biosecurity. So we want to make sure that in each sub-region of Africa, there is a regional center of excellence, so that each sub-region can support directly the surrounding or the countries, the neighboring countries, actually. Yeah, and the last proposition is also that we should be taking into consideration a risk assessment to make sure that with limited resources, we can accomplish a lot, taking into consideration a real risk assessment, which is based on what we are handling and what we have as resources. Thank you. And Africa CDC, of course, using the subject matter expert, is supporting the country, sending them for risk assessment. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Joris, for that explanation on some of the efforts by the Africa CDC. At this point, really very quick, I think I would like to move back to Peter to talk about a subject that is always of concern, especially when we are talking about cross-border security risk. So, Peter, I would like you to give us some insights into what some of the mechanisms are that should be put in place to prevent cross-border security risk caused by dual-use research and pandemic pathogen studies. Over to you, Peter.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sandra. So I would just like to give the example of East Africa community, but we also have SADC and all, basically, from the African perspective, but even in the EU. So typically, ideally, anyone who transfers biological material needs to have the corresponding documentation. So it needs to be built into the system that when a researcher is conducting research, when the protocol is being reviewed, it needs to be very explicit. If samples are collected from, let me say, Uganda, where will they be analyzed? Will they be analyzed in Uganda or in Kenya or in South Africa? And all the approvals need to cover all through that pipeline as well. There needs to be a very clear chain of custody whenever samples are transferred. And when work is done on these samples in another site or in another country, the corresponding collaborators must also have in place these same standards or mechanisms for dual-use research. And I think the best and the first way of doing it is one, governments. So there are some governments, for example, in Africa, which flat out do not allow transfer of samples. You have to process and hand all of them in country. But there are others who go that extra mile to ensure that the corresponding or partner country follows the rules. Secondly, funders. Funders need to hold researchers accountable for samples and the movement of these materials and things of the like. That's what I think, Sandra.
Thank you so much, Peter. In the interest of time, we are going to wrap up this discussion from here. But to start with, I would like to sincerely thank our incredible speakers for their time and the commitment to advancing responsible science and regional collaboration. And to you, the audience, I want to really thank you so much for joining us and for your some of the questions that came through. I should say that this particular discussion does not necessarily end here. I truly encourage you to check out a podcast by one of our fellows, that is Biosecurity Changing the Game, which is a podcast led by Dina. She's one of the Game Changers fellows. And also the recording for today's session will be available on YouTube in about a week's time. So don't hesitate to look it up and follow up on this discussion, but also share it in your network. And finally, I would like to thank the team at the Pandemic Center, Brown University Pandemic Center, for supporting the organization of this particular seminar. And also very much thank the Biosecurity Game Changers fellows, and in a special way, my co-coordinator for this seminar series, Thokozani. So until next time, stay engaged and stay safe. Bye.